Hey, and welcome back to Talos Principle, where we are going to do some puzzling today, and we are just going to ignore that the world is basically falling apart. So let's exit. Okay. Terminal is off. Let's get to actual puzzling. There are only red pieces now, so I'm guessing all of them are going to be relatively hard, so order doesn't really matter, right? So let's just go for it, I guess. Or do I want to check out the castle? I kind of want to check out the castle, just to see if there's actually a puzzle there. I did see it. It seems like there are definitely some pieces over there. Some needle gargoyles. Lovely. I hope they're enjoying their time here. More than me with like the breaking floor. Can I jump into the water? No, that's kind of rude. Let's be honest. I just wanted to wash myself into him. I mean, come on. Just reach quick like checking. Is there anything I can find? Like last time, like I'm always confused by like the shader they're using for the reflection of water. They don't really seem to work with like the leaves here, right? Like you can see deflection doing whatever it wants to do. But today I kind of just want to look around the island a little bit before I continue. Maybe there's like a secret terminal. They seem to exist every once in a while, and like more hidden off the map spots, I guess, or at least off the road. I feel like technically it's still on the map. Huh. Doesn't seem to be here in particular. Also, there aren't actually any other islands, I just noticed. Seems rather empty. Like with the first, like the Greek area, we at least had like other islands. Might be text representing something specific, like a specific area, which might just be like an island somewhere that just doesn't have any neighboring islands. How far can I go into the water? Okay, that far. Not that far at all. Okay, reading. Add again. There's so much beauty in these hidden corners of the world, even if they have no purpose. I kinda agree. It's kinda just neat to look outside, and sometimes you're just seeing stuff like, I don't know, the Statue of Liberty. The shepherd. Perhaps they are beautiful because they have no purpose. I do kinda agree. Like, when we are talking about beauty, we generally... Like, don't get me wrong. There's beauty in, like, automation, for example. Which is, like I like automation kind of games, and there's definitely some sort of beauty in moving stuff around. But as someone who has played, like, a lot of those kinds of games, or, like, you know, modded Minecraft, which kind of, weirdly enough, inspired, like, the whole like, a lot of games that then in turn inspired, like, mods in Minecraft, right? Like, there are, like, modifications that basically skip, like, the whole... I guess fancy automation part where like everything is just like instant, just as an example, right? Like, and it's really fascinating because you really lose that beauty because like you, if you think about it, you never needed it, right? Like you don't need to put items on a conveyor belt if you can just instantly transport them somewhere. But there is some beauty in doing it a silly way, I guess, and this is actually why people do it, I guess. Not all. Obviously, there's some people who like to go through like the rabbit holes of automation. Why did I talk about automation? Yeah, because of beauty. But yeah, like generally, if we're talking about like stuff that's beautiful, we don't necessarily talk about like things that's useful. Like useful things can be beautiful, but I feel this is a rather secondary thing. Can't believe that this rock isn't even part of your world. Elohim, fix your game. It certainly is something. I do like that they included something neat there. But like, you know, breaking the game in certain ways has always been something I enjoyed. And by breaking, I just mean like going off the trodden path. Do I want to do that first? I feel like this seems like kind of the finale of the area, so I'm not gonna do the castle. I just wanted to see, like, if it hadn't been like an explicit puzzle, I would have done that first. But that still means that I should probably explore more of the island in general. There are like some pathways here. Right, like why? Okay, it's not really a pathway. I guess this is more of a pathway. It's just like a little bit of rock. I was just confused why it kind of ended over here. Okay, let's follow like the hidden little path. Maybe, you know, maybe we can see like some more binoculars or something like that. Maybe not. Maybe there's like a secret terminal. Maybe not. And maybe I'm right. Maybe my instincts are just so great in this game. And... okay. I guess we just get some text, we don't get the conversation here. Against survival. Human evolution and Einstein. Okay. Against survival. Dear Mrs. Drennan, I heard about your project. It's the talk of the scientific community, and I'd like to make an argument for why you should abandon it. Interesting. It's not that I think your idea won't work. It very well may. But we have to look beyond purely practical questions to the issue of morality, especially at this turning point of our spiritual ecology. By what right can we put living beings through all that suffering just so they can serve our purposes? Why create these pale imitations of our fatally flawed species and force them to reenact our sordid history? Huh? Why something? What are you building? Wait, what you are building, Mrs. Drennan, is a prison. Even if there is a way out, I believe you mean well, but your idea of what is valuable is rooted in the dogma of Western civilization. We are lucky enough to be able to end our global crime spree relatively painlessly, if you consider the harm we have caused the Earth. Why not be satisfied with that and let this planet go on in peace? I hope you heed my words and let your Talos bleed out before it's too late. Respectfully, Chalice Jensen. This is an interesting perspective. Okay, first of all, okay, idea, you should abandon it, right? Like, okay. Interesting theory, right? Like, obviously there's like the idea, I should probably stop, obviously, right? It's just kind of been, this kind of word I just like to put it everywhere. It's just kind of me. So obviously me. But what I want to say is basically, yeah, they're like the scientists, and I'm assuming this is like a way to upload people still to like some sort of like, let's call it afterlife, right? And maybe I am also right with the fact that there's going to be a machine or like a robot that we are going to be uploaded into if we can beat whatever's happening here. Okay, so, you know, they're talking about like morality, spiritual ecology, okay. What right can we put living beings through all that suffering? That's like the first thing, right? Like everyone who would be uploaded here, I guess, would have to work through that, and you can't really stop it, right? Like you seem to be somewhat immortal, you know, ignoring any technical difficulties, because like, at least from our experience, right? Like if we die in this world, we kind of just get reset, like cloned, and then, you know, we just don't do like the last few steps, but apparently we can still remember them. I'm assuming that this is like a canonical thing that happens in this world. So you are basically here for all eternity. And if you actually believe what Elohim says, and there are like these gates to eternity, basically, that you can step into, well, that's probably even worse, right? Like there's like no way for you to end it, I'm assuming. Right, like, and we have, I think, kind of talked about like the idea that living forever until like the heat death of the universe, is that really worth it? And this is definitely a question everyone can make, you know, for themselves, right? Like we talk about like our own lives, right? Like not, we shouldn't be really deciding for others, but you kind of remove the choice for the people once they're inside. But I also still think that there's definitely a point in, you know, leaving the option open, right? But yeah. Why create the pale imitations of our fatally flawed species? Fair enough, and force them to reenact our sordid history. I'm not 100% sure about like the reenactment part, how this is meant. No, I mean, like, genuinely not quite sure, because I don't think that we are like reenacting, I guess, something in the simulation. So I'm guessing this would be like an idea for, you know, post the simulation, maybe. But yeah, like there's the idea of the prison. That's like what we kind of talked about it. And this is also really important. The idea of what is valuable, because apparently like, even if there's a way out, apparently there's a way out. I'm guessing it's the tower. And you have to accomplish the tower and like, you know, be valuable in a sense, right? Like do something that is valued by the simulation to do so. In this case, it's like collecting the pieces apparently, but it could also be something else. And yeah, it would be rooted in, they say, the dogma of Western civilization. But yeah, it's like definitely culturally shaped. Even if you upload somebody from somewhere else in the world and they have like their own ideals and stuff, they would be valuable in this simulation because we imposed, and by we I mean the scientists imposed the will on that. in a way, and you cannot, how do I put it? You cannot be unbiased, right? Like every single person is biased in a way. We can try to understand our bias and, you know, kind of rectify it, you know, afterwards. And that's definitely something, but especially with like the time crunch, I am assuming that those aren't like the most major of considerations in there. And then there's also the talk that the global crime spree is ended relatively painlessly. This is something else I touched on briefly, like the idea that there are some people who just believe, right, like humans are bad for the world and it would be better without them. We had that like when we were talking about like art, right, like how that's kind of the opposite position where we're saying, hey, humanity is worth it because we create art, which is like something very unique, while we obviously still harm the environment with like all that we have done like as a species, not like necessarily as a singular person. And so like the idea that we could like return to dust in a way, and they're talking about like it being relatively painlessly. I don't actually, we still don't really know what exactly kills humans. There are some symptoms, I'm still assuming it's like some sort of virus of sorts, but dying of illness doesn't sound fun. But like from what we have heard so far, that, I mean, there are symptoms, but I don't imagine it just being like instant death at some point, right? Like, I don't know, it's like slightly annoying, I don't know, like a slight headache and then you're just gone or something like that. Just like that. I don't know. But definitely something to think about. Like the idea, what's the Talos project worth it? I mean, first of all, was it worth it? And is it morally something that should have been done? And I guess it is kind of the moral thing, as long as you give the option for people to choose themselves whether they want to partake in it or not, because this is still an option. I feel like giving more options tends to be like the more moral option, right? In general, there are probably some ways you could construe that in a way where getting more options may be worse, right? Like, I'm just gonna ignore those thoughts here. Like, let's not talk about like such negative things here. But there are definitely cases where that could be the case if you really want to construe them. And otherwise, like, is it worth it in general? Well, if we believe that, I'm gonna call it like survival of like the human species in one way or another is worth it, then maybe. Like, I would currently still be on a side of, yeah, probably. Maybe the exact direction they went wasn't correct, but otherwise, I can just make guesses here, right? I mean, we are our character, and we kind of have to assume that our character's alive in this world. So, and since it's kind of the question of like personhood constantly, are we a person in the game? I'm just gonna assume that our character is a person. Is it worth to create like more life in a way? Or like more people? I don't know. I would argue in this case, sure, why not? Human evolution. Archive 1872. File 553 by Samuel Butler. Nothing to translate, that's great. Complex now, but how much simpler and more intelligibly organized may it not become in another 100,000 years? On 20,000? For man at present believes that his interests lies in that direction. He spends an incalculable amount of labor and time and thought in making machines breed always better and better. He has already succeeded in effecting much that at one time appeared impossible, and there seem to be no limits to the results of accumulated improvements if they are allowed to descend with modification from generation to generation. It must always be remembered that man's body is what it is through having been molded into its shape by the chances and changes of many millions of years, but that is, organization never advanced with anything like the rapidity with which that of the machines is advancing. Okay. I do love all my THs, you know, acting together. That's always fun. Anyway. Okay. The idea that humans kind of evolved by happenstance, we kind of talked about this a lot. Yeah, and then we created basically machines to do the stuff that we weren't able to do, whether it was just due to the scale or like just the exact work, right? Like look at hydraulic presses alone. Like no human could ever, you know, create that much pressure in a specific point. I don't know why that was like the one example that I had to think about, but we vastly changed, kind of, without evolution. Because we do know that like humans are like still very closely related, like most humans on Earth, I'm gonna say like all humans on Earth are like very closely related, even though they're like so many thousands of years that some cultures had like very little contact to each other. But we're like still all human in a way, right? Like we can understand that, and from like my understanding at least of like the literature, we are close enough that if you get like a family from like somewhere and put them into like another civilization, I want to say civilization, I guess, yeah, another culture, another country, and like their kids are going to be able to grow up very similar to like the other kids in that region, right? Where like the differences very quickly diminish between like generations, even though there's like no biological change happening, it's just like a cultural thing. So I would say that they are like very, very close. Even over like those thousands of years, there hasn't really been like that much that really sets us apart outside of like some, what do you call them, like phenotypes, like your like appearance. That's obviously something that, I say obviously because those are like the obvious changes that a lot of people sadly made arbitrary lines along. But yeah, that's like the one thing. But like with the machinery, especially, like that improved like so quickly. Like don't forget, like it started like 1800 something, where we got like the first machines. To be fair, we technically have like had machines before then, right? Like think about something like the windmill or like the watermill, to talk about like two mills, and that also did like work for us to a vastly, I guess, superior extent than a human could have been able to, right? Like I think again, watermill, like how much force you can generate, like even with like the worst of watermills from just the water there, right? Like using the elements that like no human could actually, I guess, work at the same level as. And then we obviously had like the acceleration since the Industrial Revolution, where like this always became quicker and quicker. And like look at the improvements that we had like over the last like 20-30 years in like so many areas of life. It's when I grew up, I got a smartphone when I was in 10th grade. No, wait. Yeah, at the very end of 10th grade. I could have gotten one like slightly earlier. Like I had like an iPod Touch 4th generation back in like 7th grade. So like a few years earlier there were like iPhones, right? Like the first smartphones that did like cool stuff, and it was like such a new tech. And these days it's actually kind of rare to meet someone who doesn't have a smartphone, right? And this is like such a change also like culturally that kind of happened. Like again, we humans haven't really evolved. Like there was no real genetic change in that sense, but we have vastly changed because of the rapid advancement of machines and us having to keep up, basically, which is always kind of fascinating to think about. There's actually something else I kind of have been thinking about when reading some of these texts about evolution. And that is like, I'm going to call it like forced evolution in a way. I feel like there's a better term for that. But we sometimes see it in like nature. Great example, obviously, dog breeds, right? Like they were like, I'm going to call it like man-made. They bred like specific traits to get like a dog that they wanted, basically. With like certain I'm gonna call it like attributes, right? Like you took like the least aggressive dogs, for example, and like combined, like made them breed constantly, and then like over the generations they, for example, became like less and less aggressive on average, and some may became taller or like even smaller, right? Like this is all like selective breeding. We also have like similar phenomenons when it comes to stuff that we did not intend to do. Like there's this one case, I think it was about like, I think it was like turtles in like some river. I am going to try to figure out like what exactly I'm thinking about. But there was like this case, and it's like just an example, there are probably tons of other cases, where turtles in a specific river grew larger and larger, and like really quickly, like over like just a few generations. And you might say like, okay, why did that happen? What changed? Well, the thing that changed was that we humans started to, I think it was like using like some crab pots to like fish up crabs, and small turtles got caught in them and suffocated. So they just were removed from the gene pool, basically. So the only ones that survived were like the turtles, like statistically survived, were the turtles who grew up not just large, but very quickly. Because they would be too small to actually enter those crab pots, so they couldn't be in a situation where they drowned. Basically, and this is like such a, I guess like such an accelerated evolution of sorts that we didn't even intend. And now the question is, are we actually experiencing that ourselves? Right, with like humans, it's like obviously a little bit different, just because, first of all, we kinda overcame natural selection in a way. Like, don't get me wrong, there are still humans who sadly do not get to grow up, right? That just still happens. But generally, we have tried to, especially since, you know, we have like all of those machines and stuff, we have kind of equaled the playing field in a way. At least like on average, I want to say. Like there are obviously like new playing fields, I guess, that aren't equal in our society. But when we're talking about like, you know, people wearing glasses, right? Like I don't need those, but there are other people who would probably in the past have really struggled to see anything and like, I guess even survive. Like imagine being like extremely nearsighted. Like in our society, that's kind of annoying that you have to get glasses, basically. But like in the past, you probably died to like some wild animal because you couldn't see it early enough, just as an example. And this also vastly changed how humans would evolve. Like I don't think that there's like a massive step or like an evolutionary step that we have done over the last few hundred years where like science and technology became like more and more of a thing. But I do believe that if we are looking into the future... Oh wow, camera. Why are you breaking so often in this game? I'm just gonna leave that. I'm sorry about that. I guess we are going to read and just see the face like that. Or like no face, I guess. Where was I? Basically, I believe that we probably, I guess, decelerated human evolution in a way. Because like normally, like when you have natural selection, the way like the mutations work out basically happens because like all of the, I guess, specimen, to be like very scientific about that, die out, that don't get to survive. But like with humans, and not technically not just humans, also with like pets and stuff, like we allow a lot more traits to survive just because we have support systems to overcome them. And like I use the example of glasses, obviously. But there are other ones, like, you know, sicknesses. Like, medicine has progressed so much in, like, the last few decades, especially. And we have defeated illnesses that normally would have killed whole generations, basically. And now it's just, like, a minor nuisance to have to get, like, to basically have to get, like, a vaccine or something like that. So... there are definitely changes, and I do believe that this would probably lead to some sort of like deceleration of evolution, like to have like drastic changes. But I could imagine, and you know, I'm not a biologist, especially not a professional one, but I would assume that the human species, instead of like evolving one direction, is going to diversify more and more in a way. Because like, okay, let's use like another example. Let's say giraffes, right? In the case of giraffes, they grew taller and taller because like the tallest giraffes got more food, basically. Obviously there are like some diminishing returns because like if you grow taller you need more food as well, so at some point that's probably not that effective. But like generally, if you are like a short giraffe, you would probably not survive in the wild, statistically speaking, at least not as long as your peers. But imagine the same example of like giraffes, but in this case, they're just like, there's just like food for everyone, and like shorter giraffes would survive. then you would probably diversify like what giraffes are, but they would still all be part of the same species. Because I feel like to be fair, like species is still somewhat arbitrary, chosen by us again, because we are somewhat the arbiter of what the words mean, more or less. But basically, I just wanted to say, like, basically we would have like a wider range of like what a giraffe would look like, at least when it comes to height in that case. And we have like a similar way, I guess, with humans. Anyway, I still have like one last text. I want to get through that one. Sorry about like no cam. I can't yap in your face. It's just kind of how it happens. I guess I'm just gonna talk about this quickly, and then worst case I'm gonna continue in the next episode with like a little bit more about Albert Einstein. Anyway, recent discussions have brought me back to an excellent 1949 article by Albert Einstein in Something. Blog quote: I recently discussed with an intelligent and well-disposed man the threat of another war, which in my opinion would seriously endanger the existence of mankind. ASCII. But this piece of ASCII just says survival. Okay. Thereupon my visitor, very calmly and coolly, said to me, "Why are you so deeply opposed to the disappearance of the human race?" I mean, okay, it's definitely a question, but we have like a similar question that we had with like the main terminal, right, like in the mail. I am sure that as little as a century ago, no one would have so lightly made a statement of this kind. It is the statement of a man who has striven in vain to attain an equilibrium within himself and has more or less lost hope of succeeding. It is the expression of a painful solitude and isolation from which so many people are suffering in these days. Just a 55? Okay. Which obviously would just be a U. Bizarre, casual disregard for humanity, a kind of fashionable self-hatred, is prevalent, or at least present, in many strands of supposedly progressive something. Swear words. Nothing seems more important to me than that we reassert the value of humanity. Despite our flaws, we must not stop celebrating the beauty of human life and human achievement. Okay. That's definitely interesting, because we had like a similar discussion in the mail that we read before, where it was basically a question, hey, why do we want to have humanity in some shape survive? And this is obviously very close to the Second World War. I mean, I mean like a post. Obviously, it's 1949. Anyway, where was I? It's still in very recent memory. That's kind of just what I want to say. And the question of why are you so deeply opposed to the disappearance of the human race is actually a rather fascinating one. Like, imagine most of the human race cease to exist. Right, like it's just like a snap of the finger, they all cease to exist. Would we care? Or like, should you care as like a singular person? Because there are some stories that are kind of about that every once in a while, especially in fiction. And I'm sorry, I wanted to not talk too much about that, but now I have thoughts. Like, imagine everyone but like your town disappeared. It's not enough people there to rebuild society, I guess. Right, there are like some. If you're just talking about a strictly biological sense, there are like some math experiments about like how many people have to be on board of like a spaceship to ensure survival, or like endless survival, basically. Mainly talking about like genetic variants, I guess. That's like the main factor there. But like, imagine it wouldn't be possible, right? Like you're there, like in a few generations of humanity will be dead, basically, because there are too few people. Should you care? And like, my answer would be a resounding yes. I feel like I would probably care. There is so much in the world that I personally care about, because people who I don't know and will never get to know created something, basically. And that might be something as art, right? Like, I have never met like the creators of this game, but it has touched me in a way that very few games, for example, do. And like, I would have never experienced that if only my if humanity had stopped existing, basically, right? Like at that point. So I would never be able to experience that. But it's also a lot closer already, like infrastructure. Like, I don't know most of the people who build roads, for example, and it's kind of useful to have them. I'll be completely honest, like I might be a car hater, but being able to walk places at least is kind of nice without having to go through forests constantly. And even if you go through forests, having a proper trail is still nicer than nothing. Now, there's still the question of, should the world care for humanity's end? And that is, I feel like, a completely different question. Because, like, as long as you're human and, like, not 100% nihilistic, I feel like you would probably care, right? But would the Earth care? And my answer is no. The Earth doesn't actually care about anything, right? Like, the Earth is a rock that's kind of just floating through space. But what about, like, the different species of animals on there? And now that's, like, a different question, because now you have kind of the same... Well, you kind of have to ask the same questions for them, right? Like, imagine you asked a very smart dog the same question, like, should you care about, like, the... I guess the survival of the species of dog. I feel like they would probably care, right? In a way. Even just by instinct. Maybe it's all just instinct, right? And this is like even before you consider like all of the, I guess, the suffering that a new world war would cause. Like, generally, I assume people are generally opposed to suffering of humans. Like, I'm gonna be, like, very brave and just assume positive things about, like, all humans here. There are obviously exceptions, but, like, overall, I would say it is definitely a thing where, I guess, humans value humans, in a way. Which is why so many have tried to, I guess, devalue certain parts of humans and, like, not see them as human. So the act of, I guess, starting a war against them, for example, seems more reasonable to them. Just my theory, though, right? Like, because they're still, how do I put it? For many of those cases, there are, I guess, origins for those conflicts. And I feel like I'm gonna be going like way too deep into like those kind of topics, but basically what I wanted to say is, like, there are definitely, I guess, tribalisms. If we are like ignoring countries and that stuff, like, let's say tribalisms, where there's always like this fear of the unknown. And I firmly do believe that originally, like, the first tribes who fought each other, basically. And I'm not saying that, like, we are better now that, society has progressed. But I do believe that a lot of that is kind of just more fear, where it started. It's, like, one of the reasons why that probably started, where you kind of had to imagine an enemy and only trust your own tribe, because, like, how would you able to trust, like, someone else from somewhere else? You don't know anything about them, right? It's like just the fear of the unknown, and basically the idea that you have to strike first. But again, this is just a theory of mine. This is not 100% true, obviously. I hope that's obvious that I do not have like all the answers. But like in modern times, for example, and like not even just modern times, but outside of the fear, basically, the fear factor, we also had like, I guess, resource scarcity that has plagued humanity for a very, very long time. And in many areas of the world still does. Where like the idea was basically, hey, if it's kill or be killed, then you probably prefer to survive, even if it's just like, if that means, I guess, having to deal with people you don't know. And by deal with, I obviously mean like not interact with them, but like, take them out in the negative way. I don't know, like there are lots of thoughts that I have, but I feel like it's kind of weird to just talk in front of a text without moving my hands around that much. I don't know. I'm just gonna leave it at that, right? Like I feel like I need to just restart my cam. I'm gonna do that for the next recording session. For now, let's just leave it here. I feel like I'm gonna talk about this in the future again though. But I'm gonna leave it here, I guess. Let's exit. And just quickly look around here in case there's like something else hidden. I guess not. Okay. How about this? I'm just gonna end the recording session here and the episode here, and next time we are going to have my face again, and I can finally yap and look into like a camera on my side. In any case, I hope you still enjoyed the episode, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. I'll be seeing you next time. Till then, have a good one, and bye-bye.